I spent thousands of dollars on a luxury watch to prove a point to a guy that I haven't seen in 25 years. Now, I already did a video about this experience, but let me give you a refresher. When I was 16 years old, I spent the entire summer working for one of the worst people I have ever met. He was one of those guys who thought having money made him better than everyone else. He micromanaged the entire crew of the construction site I was working on. He treated hardworking people with absolutely no respect, and he somehow managed to make 12-hour days in the freaking scorching Alabama summer feel even more miserable than they were already. Early in the summer, he approached me and asked me to come in a few hours early. And even though I was working 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, as a 16-year-old, he asked me to come in extra early and stay late every single day, and even come in on my day off to do extra work around that property. And he promised at the end of the summer, for all this extra work that he wasn't paying me for, he would take care of me. I ended up putting in dozens of hours of extra work, and on the last day of summer, for all of that, he gave me $20 and said he probably shouldn't have paid me at all because I looked poor while working on his property. As he said, a person who doesn't take pride in their appearance, well, they're not really working at all. When my dad confronted him about it, he ended up firing my dad. Now, that summer really stuck with me. I think about it all the time, even to this day. But there was one thing that happened that I've never forgotten. One day during lunch, this big jerk was flipping through an Omega watch catalog, and he had picked out a watch he wanted to buy, and he showed it to me, and he said, "You will never be good enough to own something like this." He always had to put people down, so he felt like he was lifted up. Well, I took that personally, as most people would, and that memory lives rent-free in my head to this very day. For 25 years, I wanted to find that exact Omega, buy it, and go stick it in his face and tell him that I'm good enough, that he was wrong. But I couldn't remember what the watch was. I only remembered the brand and kind of what it looked like. After all that time, I finally figured out what it was. I tracked it down, and it's an Omega Speedmaster Mark 40 triple date, the Schumacher. I spent over a year combing through the internet trying to find the perfect one for me. I wanted a late production model that didn't have the tritium hands that degraded the dial, and it needed to be in fairly decent condition. Finally, after all my searching, I found one, the exact one I wanted. I hit buy it now on eBay, and it was shipped off to the authenticator. There were a few little hiccups with that, but I approved the order and it came to me. And as soon as it arrived, I realized that the chronograph function of the watch didn't work. The minute counter, the subdial at 12 o'clock, was broken, and eBay authentication didn't catch it, and the guy that sold it didn't mention it. But I was in too deep, I didn't think I would find another one, and the price was so good that I just decided to live with it, and I would eventually get it serviced. But I would wait until it needed a regular service, and I would kill two birds with one stone. So I made a whole video about it, and you guys let me know that I was wrong. See, it never even occurred to me that maybe like a tooth had fallen off a gear and it was like rattling around inside the watch case, probably causing a bunch more damage. You guys suggested that I pull the stem out of the watch, stop it, and send it off for service immediately, which I decided to do. I was gonna send it into Omega themselves, not some third-party watch specialist, the makers of the watch. But I was kind of worried because this watch is like almost 30 years old. It's one of the most complicated watches Omega has ever made. It has 8 hands on the dial, man. It's all these complications. I was worried about it. The service is finished. The watch came back to me, and I have to say, it is not the experience I was expecting. And so I just want to tell you about what it's like sending a neo vintage watch off to Omega to have it serviced. First, I had to drive to Huntsville, Alabama, over 2 hours away from where I live, home of the Space and Rocket Center, the Von Braun Center, Project Paperclip, where they invented the rockets. Omega and space, well, they're like brothers, man. They go together like peanut butter and jam for all of you in Europe, and peanut butter and jelly for all of you in the United States, or the people that don't eat peanut butter. What do you guys eat? Nutella and jam. Is that even good? Now, I walked into that AD, told them I needed a service on my watch. The gentleman working there recognized the watch and told me how cool it was. And I said, do not polish the case. Do not replace the hands. Do not replace the dial. Do not replace the bezel. Do not replace anything that doesn't absolutely have to be replaced. I want this watch to stay as original as possible. I love the patina of it. I don't want to erase its history. But please, replace the flippin' crystal, because it's scratched to hell and the flippin' AR coating on it is like degrading and you can't even read this watch in the sun. And the guy at the AD said, you know, I can make notes, but Omega tends to just do what they do and they'll probably polish it and they'll replace it, but I can make notes and hopefully they won't do that. I was not real happy about that, but I guess that was a better alternative than just not having the watch work. So I agreed, and then he charged me $50 to ship the watch to Omega. That happened all the way back in February. I waited about 3 weeks and the AD called me and they had an estimate to fix the watch. Yes, it can be fixed, but it was going to cost $1,050. That's a lot of money, but honestly, I was afraid it was going to be a lot more. I thought it was going to be like more than the cost of the watch. I gave my consent. They told me it would go right into processing to be serviced. Then on May 1st of this year, 3 months later, I got the call that my watch was ready and was back in Huntsville, Alabama, and that I needed to come pick it up. So I took a personal day at work and drove all the way up to Huntsville, 4 hours round trip, to pick up my watch. And let's see my reaction to that. I just picked up my Omega from service from Reed's. I'm dual wristing like a total freaking douche. I didn't think about it, but it looks great. It looks great. They didn't change out any of the parts. They left it looking neo-vintage. When they showed me the watch at the AD and I had it in my hand again after all these months and it was working and it looked great, I was so thrilled. But then I got to the car and I noticed this. So I got in the car to look at the watch and noticed they didn't replace the crystal, which I specifically requested they replace. Like, you can see it, the crystal's all scuffed up. There, you can see it right there. All the AR coating is scratched on the crystal. What the actual hell? I guess I'm gonna go back in there. They didn't replace the crystal. That was the thing I specifically asked them to replace. So then I had to go back into the AD and ask them why they didn't do what I had just paid them for and why they hadn't replaced the crystal. All right, well, how disappointing. I'm just leaving Reed's Jewelers again. And I requested a crystal replacement when I dropped off the watch, and they did not put it in the service request. They failed to do that. And then when Omega sent them the estimate for how much it would cost to repair everything, they suggested to replace the crystal as an optional feature, or an optional charge. And when they called me on the phone to okay everything, they just didn't mention it. They just didn't say that it was an option. They didn't mention any of the options. None of them. They just like told me the base price. I was like, okay. So it didn't get done. They told me that the cost of the crystal would be 200 and something bucks, but then it would have to be sent back in, and that they'd be happy to split the cost with me. I was like, no, I'm not gonna, no. And he said, well, he agreed that he would eat the cost to ship it to him, get the crystal replaced. And I explained to him that, you know, I've traveled up here now. This is gonna be 4 trips. You know, 2 round trips, 2-hour drive. That's 8 hours of travel time to bring them a watch that I don't have in my hand. I had to take off today from work to come up here because the only time this place is open is while I work. He apologized. He said he would send it in, he'd eat the cost, and he would ship it to me when it came in next time. What was I gonna do? Pay all that money for a watch to have it only like halfway return to what I wanted? No. So I just decided I would wait longer. I waited another 6 weeks. And about a week ago, in the middle of June, I got the call that it had come back in and the crystal had been replaced. I had to remind them that they promised they would mail it to me, and they did. And 2 days later, it was at my door. And guys, Omega flippin' killed it. They did such a good job. It was exactly what I wanted. The chronograph functions perfectly. It times up to 12 hours, and I tested it for the full 12 hours, and it worked great. All the hands are aligned correctly, all 8 of them. And best of all, they didn't polish the case. They didn't replace the bezel. They didn't replace the dial. They didn't even replace the hands. Yeah, the watch looks shinier because it's not dirty anymore, but they didn't erase the history of it. And the new crystal looks gorgeous. It's perfect. However, they did have to replace a few things. Well, RNG, what did they have to replace? Well, let me tell you, because we know. And you know how we know? Because they returned every single part they took off the watch so that I would have all the original pieces. It's all here. These are the pins and collars from the pin and collar bracelet. This watch has a pin and collar bracelet. It is a neo-vintage piece. So they were still using this. They replaced each and every single pin and collar in that entire bracelet. Even though they look pretty straight, I can see that some of them are slightly bent, which meant that's what was causing the bracelet to feel a little loose. They fixed all of that. Here is the old crystal and the gaskets that go under the crystal. They even returned the freaking plastic and rubber gaskets that went with the crystal, man. And this one is my favorite. We have all of the gaskets for the waterproof of the case. They even returned the flippin' spring bars. We have the crown and both pushers and the little pusher tubes that go behind the pushers. They returned everything to me. Everything. They even sent it to me in this embossed leather red travel case. That's incredible. And after they were done with service, they checked and saw that it was running 5 seconds a day, which is within spec for a watch that's flipping 30 years old. They did a vacuum test and a pressure test to make sure it was as waterproof as it can be. And then when it went back in for the crystal, they checked it again and it was still running at 5 seconds plus a day. That's crazy. They checked it twice. That tells me that they don't let any Omega coming through their factory leave without being checked that it's running right, even though they just worked on it like a couple of weeks earlier. Now the AD was a little problematic to deal with. I wasn't thrilled with the service from that AD. They didn't communicate the information correctly. They did not relay what Omega was trying to tell to me. It was way out of the way, and then they kind of wanted me to like pay extra for their mistake. But they buckled at the end and did the right thing. However, in general, driving up there like 2 hours, I don't know that it was worth it. I might make a 3-hour trip and go to a different AD next time. But the Omega service was top notch. Absolutely top notch. I could not be any happier. It was 100% worth the $1,100 that I had to pay. And I am so glad you guys convinced me to go ahead and send it in. That was the right decision. Imagine how expensive it would have been if something else in the watch broke and it just cascaded. I'm glad I decided to do it, and thank you so much for that. I absolutely loved this watch, and I love it even more now. And I'm so thrilled knowing that one day it will be on the wrist of one of my children, and that there's someone out there that can work on it and keep it in top shape for them. That fills me with so much joy. Well guys, I hope you liked the video. If you did, do that for me. Subscribe to the channel, give me a like, leave me a comment, hype the video. Have you ever had any good or bad experiences having a watch serviced? Because this is the first time I've ever really sent one off to the original manufacturer, at least for a watch that was older than 10 years. Great service. I really appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.